A few days back, I swung by the wedding spot to make sure everything was on track for my daughter's big day. This was her second shot at marriage, and I'd forked over the cash for the event as a gift and a way to mend fences with her. When I arrived, a guard was posted at the entrance, only letting the wedding crew through. He blocked my way, and I questioned why. He demanded to know who I was. Naturally, I told him I was the father of the bride, just there to check in and ensure things were smooth sailing. The moment I mentioned being her dad, he went all apologetic, but he insisted I had to split. I double-checked if I had the right spot, since this was supposed to be Gabriel and Felicia's wedding. Turns out he'd been given strict orders to keep me and my wife Anna far away from the wedding. I was steaming mad because I shelled out for the wedding, yet they were shutting me out at the door. The guard dialed up the wedding planner to let him know I was hanging around. The planner hit me with the news that I wasn't on the guest list. Turns out, my daughter had thrown down the gauntlet and banned both me and my wife from her upcoming wedding. I figured it had to be some mix-up, and I even had a row with the planner about it, until he showed me the emails where my daughter had spelled out who she didn't want at the event. I wrangled with the security and the planner for a good while, until my wife finally said we should call it quits. I was left puzzled, wondering why she'd do that, especially considering I was footing the bill for her big day. Then it dawned on me that nothing had really changed. I tried to give her a ring, but she had her phone on voicemail. I recollected she was likely at the bachelorette party. No big deal. I didn't need to talk to her anymore. Actually, it was a blessing that I found out before it was too late. She thought she could pull a fast one, make me pay for her wedding, and then shut me out as a form of payback. It's a somber realization for a parent when they see their kid's rotten side and know all the love in the world won't fix it. Little did she know, I had a school connection with the venue owner who happened to be out of town. I had a talk with him, letting him know that the wedding was a no-go and my daughter was going to reschedule it at a different spot. I'd already paid the deposit, which he got to pocket. Everything else, from her dress to decor and so on, was all covered by me. I left those things for her, but getting married the next day was out of the question. I tried being a good dad, but it's always something new with her. My wife, who she's despised since day one of our marriage, backed me up on this choice. She even mentioned how she had warned me about letting Felicia back into my life. I get that this is quite a shocker because you don't see a dad messing up his own daughter's wedding every day. After blowing up at me for supposedly wrecking her big day and causing a scene in front of her friends and family, she cut ties with me. She showed up at the venue only to find the guests outside and security turning them away because the reservation was canceled. Just like I anticipated, she called me in a fury, demanding to know why I was trying to mess up her life like this. Honestly, I wouldn't have taken such a step if she hadn't been acting like an ungrateful troublemaker. So let me give you the lowdown on how this all unfolded and how I've essentially lost my daughter now. I'm a 55-year-old guy, running a successful business that's been thriving for the past few years. I went through a divorce with my first wife, who's 51 now, when my daughter Felicia was a teenager. Now she's 26 and has already been married once. Our relationship has deteriorated over time due to her poor choices. Even getting her through graduation was a struggle, as she fell into drugs, skipped classes, and hung out with the wrong crowd at school. I provided her with everything she wanted and even got her into therapy. But she persisted in her ways. My family attempted to guide her and steer her in the right direction, but their efforts were in vain. I sent her to live with her grandmother, aunt, and even cousins at various times, but they all eventually gave up on her. She was quite a handful. They complained about her being disrespectful and bullying adults. For a while, I blamed myself because of my divorce from her mother and the distance it created between them. However, I soon realized that her problems ran deeper. 6 years ago, I remarried Anne, a grounded teacher 10 years my junior. When my daughter first met Anne, she immediately accused her of being a gold digger and too easy. She was furious about my marriage and accused me of being selfish. She labeled Anne as one of those women who target older men for their money. Back then, I was living with her, and she didn't make Anne's life easy at all. I reached my limit when she tossed some of Anne's clothes, so I decided it was time for her to leave. We managed to patch things up after she offered an apology, but her relationship with Anne remained strained. They couldn't get along anymore, and I couldn't even leave them alone together. Every time I did, they'd go at each other like a couple of angry animals. Even when she visited me and left the house, they wouldn't exchange a greeting. This put me in an incredibly awkward position with both of them. I was taken by surprise when, during her senior year, she started to behave more reasonably. Those calls about her missing class or getting into trouble stopped coming in. I don't even want to get into the things I had to do to keep her in college. During Christmas, she brought this guy named Joel home. He seemed like a genuinely good guy, got along with my wife and me, and was probably the only one who could keep her in check. He was an honest, hardworking guy with a lot of potential. Just 6 months into their relationship, he asked her to marry him. And honestly, I was okay with it. Their wedding was beautiful, and they moved to a different city. We stayed connected, visiting each other for special occasions and birthdays. I thought everything was going well in their marriage based on what they told me. While she still wasn't fond of my wife, she had become a lot more civil. After some time since they tied the knot, my wife and I thought it'd be a cool idea to drop by for a surprise visit. We were genuinely happy to see her making changes and holding down a steady job, a first for her. So, without giving her a heads up, we snagged her an upscale watch and flew her out to the city. Once we were set up at our hotel, we swung by to see her. We headed to her apartment, but when we knocked, no response. We started getting concerned and decided to give the door a push, and wouldn't you know it, it wasn't locked. And then I caught sight of something I really wish I could scrub from my memory. My daughter was in her living room getting intimate. The guy with her started saying sorry, and they were about to make a run for it. Then we spotted there was another guy in the mix, someone who wasn't her husband. She started explaining and all that jazz. I was on the brink of clocking the guy due to my raging anger. He bolted after she got dressed. She tried to explain it was just a mistake and that things were fine between her and her husband. But I couldn't let her spin that lie to the poor man. He seemed like a decent dude who deserved the truth. She begged for another shot and pleaded with us not to wreck her marriage by spilling her secret to her husband. This set off a whole lot of yelling and her making me feel guilty once more. Well, that plan didn't pan out. The excuse of, "I messed up because you and Mom divorced," had an expiration date. My assumption that she'd transformed was dead wrong. I put my heart and soul into raising her, showing her as much love as possible. Despite her absent mother, she paid me back by getting into scrapes and turning family against me, and I always stood up for her. My wife and I left her place and immediately reached out to her husband. We spilled the beans about what we had walked in on, and the poor guy was utterly shattered. I mean, completely broken. He admitted he had suspicions building up, but she consistently manipulated the situation, making him feel like he was the one being controlling and insecure. Eventually, they ended up splitting, which turned into a divorce not long after their wedding. She put the blame on us for their breakup, saying it was all a mistake and that she truly loved him. After that, she cut off all communication with us for months. Out of the blue, about 3 months ago, she sent a birthday gift. I couldn't even leave her alone in a room with a spoon, so I was puzzled by her sudden kindness. A few days later, she called, claiming she missed me and wanted to be a little nicer to Anne. It became a thing for her to check in on us a few times a week. Anne even mentioned that she texted her and found her acting civil for once in her life, but she still had reservations about her intentions. I couldn't help but agree with Anne. I treaded cautiously in my interactions with her. Then she began coming over to stay at our place for several days. I didn't stop her. It actually gave us a chance to hash out what had gone wrong between us. She took the initiative to apologize for her past resentment and owned up to her mistakes. She confessed that she truly loved her husband but couldn't shake off her past behavior. I felt a pang of guilt for not letting her come clean about her affair to him on her own terms. Maybe if I had, they'd still be together now. She started showing up during holidays and put in effort to connect with Anne. They weren't best buddies yet, but there was mutual respect. I was thrilled about her change in attitude and genuinely believed my daughter had turned a corner. After a couple of months of reconnecting, she invited us over for dinner. She'd recently moved back to our city and wanted us to see her new place. To my surprise, she dropped a bombshell. She'd met Gabriel just a few months ago and had fallen head over heels for him. Now, I don't want to sound judgmental, but he wasn't exactly her usual type. He struck me as someone from modest beginnings, a notion he confirmed when he told us about his job. He worked as a clerk in a small grocery store. While I still believe no one could truly replace her first husband, this new guy did come across as a decent person. He was a good-looking young man, a couple of years younger than her, and just starting out in his career, so he wasn't exactly rolling in cash yet. But hey, She was content, and she claimed he was the catalyst for reconnecting with us and patching things up. Although my wife and I had some reservations, wondering if he could handle her because she had her demanding moments, we decided to embrace their relationship even before we wrapped up dinner. Then she dropped another bombshell. She was sure he was the one she wanted to marry. A wedding was in the works, just a couple of months away. I was genuinely thrilled for her. It seemed like she was genuinely getting her life back on track. I inquired about the wedding date, and she admitted they weren't entirely sure yet. Finances were tight, and they needed some time to save up. I could see the sadness in her eyes as she said this, and as a father, my heart went out to her. That night, I discussed it all with Anne. We recognized that we bore some responsibility for her first marriage falling apart, and we both sincerely wanted her happiness restored. So I made up my mind that I'd foot the bill for her entire wedding, and Anne was on board to assist with the planning. It was a burning desire to see the two most important women in my life get along. While I didn't really dive into the nitty-gritty of wedding arrangements, her biological mother decided she wanted a piece of the action, too. I wasn't exactly thrilled about it, given that she and Anne weren't exactly best pals. But I've got to pick my battles wisely. In the end, for the sake of Felicia, I decided to let it slide and allowed her biological mom to join in the planning process. She went all out, getting a dress from one of the top designers in the city, pricey rings, and booking the most coveted venue in town. I had a connection with the venue's owner from our school days. It's hosted weddings for many big names, and reservations are typically made months in advance. So, it was no small affair. Let's put it that way. Everything seemed to be on track, and I had her outfit ready for the big day. I wanted to ensure everything went off without a hitch on her special day. I suppose I was just being a protective father. You know how it is. But as the days drew closer, I started getting a bit jittery that things might not go as planned. She told me she was having trouble getting hold of the person handling the decorations. That's when I decided to take a breather from my packed schedule and swing by the venue for a check. Can you believe it? I was halted by security because apparently I was trespassing at my own daughter's wedding location. Unbelievable, right? It all clicked when I connected the dots. She was out for revenge. This vengeful behavior of my daughter's dates back to her early days, and it seems she's held onto grudges like they're glued to her. I was pretty darn certain that she was plotting some sort of scam to get back at me for spilling the beans to her ex about her cheating escapades. So, yeah, when the wedding day arrived, we were turned away at the door. The decoration crew had been told to pack up and leave that very afternoon. Guess who was the first to dial me up, demanding to know why the place wasn't set up? Yep, her mother. I just told her, "Why don't you ask your daughter?" A few hours later, Anne and I were swamped with calls from relatives and her buddies, all wondering why the plug had been pulled on my daughter's big day. I'll confess, it was a petty move on my part, but I've had enough of her antics. She's been punishing me for as long as I can remember. She despised it when I moved forward with my life, and she's got this entitlement vibe where she thinks the world owes her something. Whatever she's wanted, she's gotten. I reckon this might just be a lesson for her. Time to stop pointing fingers at others for her screw-ups and start owning up to her choices. Since then, she's gone ahead and blocked me after spreading a load of fabricated tales about yours truly. People can choose to buy into her stories if they want. But you know what? I'm beyond caring at this point. She's managed to make me look like a chump one last time in her life. I did what I should have done a long time ago. I stumbled upon a little update on a totally different thread by the same poster here. Basically, what unfolded afterwards was that the daughter had to push back her wedding. Eventually, she ended up getting hitched in a smaller church with way fewer guests because apparently her family was fuming about her actions. And let me tell you, they were utterly shocked. How didn't her fiancé bail on her? Well, he's reached a point where he just doesn't care anymore. OP, original poster, also reached out to the venue owner, apologized for the cancellation, spilled the beans on the whole situation, and even coughed up some cash to cover the losses due to the cancellation. OP mentioned that they could have legally gone after her, but decided not to. Till this day, they're still not in contact. What a roller coaster, right? Now, folks, I'm going to be straight with you. I'm not really going to pick sides here. I get that OP is pretty much being taken for a ride by his own daughter, but apparently she's got some reasons behind her actions. To me, it sounds like a full-on toxic situation. It does leave a bit of a sour taste in my mouth that things ended without any contact. But hey, Sometimes you just gotta accept that's the way the cookie crumbles. So, what's your take on this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this tale caught your attention the most? And can we just acknowledge the fact that the venue owner got caught up in this family drama and is now losing money? I think that wasn't fair. Story 2. My wedding went down on a Saturday, and let me tell you, it ranks high up there among the best days of my life. Now, while my husband-to-be and I were all geared up for this small, cozy ceremony, just the two of us, 8 close pals, and a photographer, my dear old mom and brother decided to spice things up a bit in a rather stressful way. I had my 3 best buddies on the guest list, and, well, I thought why not invite my mom, too? So I gave her the scoop and the deets about where and when everything was going down. She seemed pretty excited and asked for all the specifics so she and my bro could mark it in their calendars. Now I made it clear that our little shindig was keeping it tight with just 8 guests. But wouldn't you know it, she got all worked up about it and started suggesting I should practically force my brother to be there. I tried explaining that due to the pandemic, wedding venues were being super strict with the guest list, but she wasn't having any of it. In fact, she threw out this gem of an idea that either me or my hubby should uninvite someone just so my brother could squeeze in. I put my foot down and told her that wasn't even on the table, and that I'd talk to her again closer to the big day to sort things out. Oh, and just as a side note, me and my brother, yeah, not exactly BFFs. Let me tell you, my brother is a real attention-seeking brat. He's pulled some stunts in the past, like swiping things from me and getting mixed up with drugs, which honestly made me want to keep a mile-long distance from him. Sometime down the line, we crossed paths with my mom again, and finally, she got the picture that my brother ain't making it to the wedding. My hubby pitched in too, mentioning that none of his sisters would be in attendance either. So I laid it out for my mom that I'd spoken to my aunt and uncle about throwing a little South African barbecue, a braai, later in the day for family and friends. I felt like everything was on track. But then, out of the blue, I get a message from my aunt that basically spilled the beans. She gave me the heads up that mom was scouting out another spot for the reception, and I should brace myself for a call. If I still wanted to stick with the original plan, all I had to do was let them know. You know how it is, love you and all. In just a matter of minutes, the venue folks were hitting me up, looking for a head count to crunch some numbers. I broke it to them that, sadly, our budget was tighter than a drum. We were thinking of keeping it around R12,000 to R15,000 for the whole shebang. And guess what? The ceremony and paperwork already chewed up 10 grand. That's a bit out there for some of our guests. Just so you know, me and my hubby are both in our early 20s, so our wallets ain't exactly overflowing. But hey, the big day's still gonna be full of joy even if we don't blow the budget sky high. So I had to drop a message to my own mom and stick to the original game plan. Then she gives me a ring and goes full steam ahead with her points. She's on about how it's not classy enough, we ought to cough up extra bucks for the venue. And she's got this fantasy that we're rolling in secret riches. She tosses in how my aunt's too old and worn out for hosting a big do, even though my aunt never uttered a word of that. She's harping on that it's not fair for her to shell out for her own grub and booze, but I should foot the catering bill. And oh, it's a hike for my mom to drive there. If guests can't manage her spot, then they're not really interested. Parking's tight, and she's got more to say than I got breath. After her spiel made its third lap, I broke in and told her I'm hashing it out with my aunt and uncle, then hung up. We fired out the invite soon after to put a stop to her poking around. Of course, she gave the guilt trip a go, but Saturday swings in and we're all over at my mother-in-law's joint getting set for the big day. After the shutterbug snapped some solo shots of me, I mentioned I might skip the tie and blazer at the ceremony because it's a scorcher outside. My mom jumps in, going on about how I should wear 'em to look respectable. That made my mother-in-law uncomfortable, so I told my mom to back off and reminded her it ain't about her. Also found out she labeled us as cheap for not splurging more so my brother could show up. We arrive at the wedding venue and start setting things up. My mom gets this idea that we should cut the cake before the ceremony, for some odd reason, and get some pictures taken. But the photographer steps in and says it's not the right time. He wants to capture great shots during the ceremony. The ceremony goes off without a hitch, and then we're into the photo session. The photographer pulls us aside to capture the cake cutting, making sure no one messes up the shot. My mom goes ballistic for not being included in the moment and loses it because I sliced the cake into equal pieces. I'm a solid dude, not chubby, but I've been touchy about my body thanks to her snide remarks in the past. You can imagine how I felt when she smacked my stomach, probably harder than intended, and told me to suck it in. I was just relieved when the photo session was done and we could bail to take a breather. We head over to my aunt and uncle's place to await the guests. After a bit, most of them arrive, including my mom and brother. Everyone's kicking back, chatting, and having drinks. For a while, nothing really notable happens except my brother basically vacuuming up a bowl of chips in front of everyone. We started grilling around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I knew the in-laws were only going to make it after 6, so my husband asked if we could throw our meat on earlier so they wouldn't have to eat alone. I was totally okay with that plan. My mom and brother's meat got cooked pretty early, so they dug in early. Then my brother starts bugging my mom about having cake. We had a second cake ready for the bride, and here's where things get interesting. My mom started hounding me every time I passed her about serving the cake. Her boyfriend tried to tell her more than once to chill out, that we'd serve it when the time was right. But then I was carrying some disposable plates for some guests inside because, get this, my mom wanted to watch them. Strange, right? So she corners me indoors and this conversation happens. Her: don't you think it's time to cut the cake? Me: no. Hudson's family hasn't shown up yet and we haven't had our meal. Her: well, you should. Me: are you done eating? Her: our food isn't ready yet, Mom, and we'll eat once the other guests have been served. Her: what if I'm your aunt? Cut the cake. Me: then you can grab some cake after you've eaten. Her: Mom, it's the wedding cake. The people actually getting married are the ones who should cut it. Her: but some of your guests are tired. Like who? Me: like you, Mom. Me: well, you'll just need to wait because we're not ready to cut it. This day isn't about you. She was about to keep arguing, but luckily my aunt swooped in to distract her, so I took the opportunity to sneak away. Later on, I found out that Mom tried to pester my husband, but he's a pro at brushing people off. Eventually, we got around to doing the cake cutting, and my mom grabbed the knife. We managed to wrest the knife from her grip and began the cutting, but she turned it into the tiniest slices you could imagine. A bit annoying, but folks just took a couple of those tiny pieces. Then she stuck around for an extra 2 hours, despite claiming to be tired. When she finally left, we were pretty relieved since it meant we could finally kick back. Surprisingly, my brother wasn't causing too much trouble for once, though he did get caught snooping around, trying to find unlocked cars so he could rummage through them. Thankfully, someone spotted him before he could snatch anything. Yeah, quite the day.